She missed her flight, but what happened next will make you question everything about fate. Airports have a way of making you feel small, like you're just another face in an endless sea of travelers. That's exactly how Danielle Rivers felt as she rushed through Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, her tote bag digging into her shoulder and her boarding pass clenched in her hand like it held her entire future. Because, in a way, it did. She had exactly 14 minutes to get from Terminal B to Terminal D for her connecting flight to Los Angeles. If she missed this one, the last leg of her journey to Seattle would be gone too. And missing this trip wasn't an option. Not when this was her first real chance at interviewing for a job that could change everything. Danielle glanced at the screen above gate D4 as she power-walked past a crowded Starbucks. Her heart dropped. Final boarding. Great. Just great, she muttered under her breath, weaving through the human traffic like a running back in the fourth quarter. And then she saw him. An elderly man in a wrinkled gray jacket, hunched over a luggage cart near the TSA checkpoint. His suitcase had fallen sideways, its contents spilling. A couple of shirts, some papers, and what looked like a family photo frame. He was struggling to bend down, knees trembling like they might give out any second. People passed by him like he was invisible. No one even slowed down. Danielle froze for half a second, torn between two worlds. The gate that promised her future and the stranger who clearly needed help. Her chest tightened. "Don't do it," she whispered to herself. "You can't afford to." But when the old man reached for the fallen picture frame, his hand shaking so badly he almost dropped it, something inside her broke. She sighed, shoved her phone into her pocket, and jogged over. "Sir, let me help you with that," she said, crouching down and gathering his scattered clothes. "Oh, thank you," he breathed, his voice raspy. "These hands, they don't work like they used to." "No problem," she smiled, tucking the photo back into the suitcase. "You traveling alone?" "Yes, my son was supposed to come, but he—" The man paused, clearing his throat, and Danielle noticed the way his eyes glistened behind his glasses. She didn't push. She just zipped the suitcase, loaded it onto the cart, and glanced toward her gate one last time. The clock on the wall read 2:41 p.m. Her plane would be gone by 2:50. Still, she tightened the handle on his cart and said, "Come on, let's get you to your gate." But Danielle had no idea. Helping this man would cost her the flight and change her life in a way she could never imagine. As they moved slowly through the airport, Danielle's mind wasn't on the time. It was on the man leaning heavily on the cart handle. His breathing was shallow, his steps unsteady. She adjusted her pace so he wouldn't feel rushed. "Do you know what gate you're headed to?" she asked, her voice calm, even though her stomach was in knots. He squinted at the ticket in his trembling hand. "Gate F7. I think that's what it says." Danielle nodded. F7. That was way across the terminal. She bit her lip, but kept her smile steady. "We'll get there." And as she said it, she wondered if she meant it for him or herself. Because, truth be told, life hadn't exactly been on her side lately. Danielle was 33, living in a small apartment in Albuquerque, New Mexico, juggling 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. By day, she worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic. By night, she cleaned offices downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, barely. Most days, she skipped lunch to save money, and she hadn't been on a real vacation in over 5 years. This trip to Seattle? It wasn't a vacation. It was her shot. A marketing firm there had called her for an interview, an entry-level position that could finally pull her out of the endless cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was hope. And hope was something Danielle couldn't afford to lose. She'd woken up at 4 a.m. for this trip, driven 2 hours to the airport to catch her first flight, and now she was one connection away from the city that might change her life. Everything depended on this. Her friends would probably call her crazy for stopping. Her sister, Alina, definitely would. Alina was the practical one, the don't risk it for strangers type. She'd warned Danielle before she left. Keep your head down, make your flight, don't play hero. And for a second back there, Danielle had heard that voice in her head. But then she saw the old man's hands trembling, his lips pressed tight like he didn't want to cry in front of strangers, and she just couldn't walk away. As they walked, she glanced at him again. He looked fragile, but there was something about his eyes. Tired, yes, but sharp. like there was more to him than the frail frame and worn-out jacket. "You visiting family?" she asked, trying to make the silence less heavy. The man chuckled softly, though it came out more like a cough. "You could say that. Heading to Los Angeles first, then... well, it doesn't matter much." Danielle nodded politely, sensing he didn't want to share details. "Well, I'm headed to Seattle for a job interview." "Oh?" His eyebrows lifted. "That's exciting." "Yeah, if I make it there," she said with a short laugh. She tried to make it sound like a joke, but the knot in her chest tightened. And for the first time since she'd stopped to help him, the weight of what she might lose started creeping in. Her eyes flicked toward the nearest clock, 2:44 p.m. She swallowed hard, but the man stopped walking, and what he said next would make Danielle forget about the time entirely. The old man stopped near a row of seats by a window overlooking the tarmac. He gripped the cart handle like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Danielle's heart gave a small squeeze. He looked exhausted. "You okay?" she asked gently. Yes. Just need a moment," he replied, lowering himself slowly onto one of the chairs. His voice carried that dry rasp that comes from age and maybe a little pride, the kind that hates admitting weakness. Danielle parked the luggage cart and crouched beside him. "Can I get you some water? Or something to eat?" He shook his head, though his hands were still trembling slightly. "Water would be nice, if it's not too much trouble." "Not at all. Be right back," she said, grabbing her tote bag and heading toward a small newsstand a few feet away. As she stood in line for a bottle of water, her eyes darted to the clock overhead, 2:46 p.m. Her gate wasn't even in this terminal. A pang of anxiety hit her stomach hard. She could still make it, maybe, but she'd have to sprint like her life depended on it. And right now, this felt like a different kind of life or death situation. When she returned, he was staring out the window at a plane taxiing slowly across the runway. She handed him the bottle and he accepted it with a faint smile. "Thank you. What's your name, young lady?" "Danielle," she said, sitting on the edge of the seat next to him. "And you?" "Walter," he said simply, twisting the cap off the bottle. His fingers fumbled for a second before he managed to get it open. "Walter Kensington." Danielle smiled. "Nice to meet you, Walter." "Likewise, and thank you for stopping. Most people just walked right past." Danielle shrugged lightly. "Well, most people aren't me." He chuckled at that, a soft, warm sound. "And that's a good thing." There was something in the way he said it, like he was studying her, really seeing her. Danielle suddenly felt a little self-conscious, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You traveling alone?" she asked, more to break the silence than anything else. "Yes, my son was supposed to meet me, but plans change." He gave a little sigh. "Seems like plans always change." Danielle nodded slowly, unsure what to say. She glanced at the time again, 2:48 p.m. Her throat tightened. "I need to go." But then Walter leaned forward, gripping the cart handle, and for a second it looked like he might fall. Danielle instinctively reached out, steadying him by the elbow. "You sure you're okay?" she asked, her voice firm now. Yes, he said, regaining his balance. "Just these old legs. They don't cooperate anymore." Danielle exhaled slowly. She couldn't leave him like this, not when he could barely stand on his own. "Come on," she said, looping her arm through his. "Let's get you to that gate." He looked at her for a moment, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Then he nodded. "You're very kind, Danielle." "Don't mention it," she said with a small smile. They started moving again, Walter leaning on her arm as much as the cart. The walk was slow, painfully slow for someone who had less than 2 minutes to make her own flight. Every step felt like time slipping away. Danielle's heart pounded. She glanced at her phone, 2:49 p.m. Her plane was boarding, and she was halfway across the wrong terminal. They finally reached the sign pointing toward gate F7. Danielle's stomach sank. It was still a good 5-minute walk away. For him, maybe 10. Her chest tightened like a vice. "Walter, can I grab an airport assistant for you? They have wheelchairs. They can get you there faster." He shook his head firmly. No, just a little more. I can do this." Danielle hesitated, torn apart inside, but she couldn't force him, so she kept walking with him, her legs screaming to run the other way. By the time they turned the corner and saw F7 in the distance, the screen above the counter read, "Boarding closed." Walter looked up at her with a faint smile. "Thank you, Danielle." for staying with me. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A notification from the airline app. Your flight to Los Angeles has departed. Danielle swallowed hard. Her chest felt hollow. This was it. She'd blown her shot. But before she could say a word, a gate agent stepped forward and greeted Walter like he was royalty. Mr. Kensington, we've been waiting for you. Everything is ready. Danielle blinked, confused. Waiting for him? Walter gave the agent a nod and turned back to Danielle. Looks like this is where we part ways. He held out his hand. His grip, though soft, was surprisingly steady now. Thank you, Danielle, he said again. You've done more than you know. Danielle forced a smile, even though her heart was breaking. She shook his hand, turned away, and started walking toward the nearest airline desk to figure out her next move. But just as she reached the counter, her name echoed through the terminal, called by someone who would change everything. Passenger Danielle Rivers, please come to gate F9. Danielle froze mid-step, her heart skipping like a scratched CD. The announcement repeated, crisp, over the intercom. Passenger Danielle Rivers, please report to gate F9 immediately. She blinked at the nearest sign. F9? That wasn't her original gate. Her flight had left. So why were they calling her? Her mind raced. Maybe they'd rebooked her? Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. Clutching her tote bag, she hurried down the corridor, sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Every second felt heavier than the last. When she reached F9, a young woman in a navy blue uniform smiled at her like they'd been expecting her all along. Ms. Rivers? Danielle nodded, breathless. Yes, that's me. Is this about my flight? The woman's smile widened, but there was something almost secretive about it. Please follow me. Danielle frowned. Follow you where? Look, I missed my connection, but I have to get to Seattle tonight. Can you? Don't worry, the woman interrupted gently. We'll take care of you. Something about the way she said it made Danielle stop arguing. She adjusted the strap on her bag and followed, her thoughts spinning like a carnival ride. We'll take care of you. What did that even mean? They walked past crowded gates, down a quiet hallway she'd never noticed before. Her sneakers tapped softly against the floor, the sound swallowed by the silence. It didn't feel like an airport anymore. It felt private. Finally, the woman stopped in front of a sleek glass door with a silver keypad. She typed a code, and the door clicked open. Right this way. Danielle stepped inside and almost forgot how to breathe. The room was like something out of a movie. Plush leather chairs, soft lighting, a buffet table stacked with gourmet snacks and champagne. It smelled faintly of vanilla and fresh flowers. A huge window overlooked the runway, but there were no crowds here. Just a quiet, luxurious calm that made Danielle feel like she'd walked into another world. I think you have the wrong person, she whispered, clutching her bag tighter. I can't afford this. The woman smiled again. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Have a seat. Someone will be right with you. Danielle opened her mouth to protest, but then she saw him. Walter. Except he didn't look anything like the frail old man she'd walked through the terminal. He was standing by the window in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her car, speaking to two men in sharp blazers. His posture was straight, his movements confident, his entire presence commanding. Danielle's breath caught in her throat. What in the world? Walter turned, and when his eyes landed on her, that same warm smile spread across his face, but now it carried weight, power. Danielle, he said, walking toward her with a steadiness that made her wonder if his earlier weakness had been real at all. She stood frozen as he reached her and extended his hand. Thank you for waiting. I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk. Danielle blinked, trying to process what was happening. I don't understand. What is this place? Why am I here? Walter's smile deepened. This is one of our private lounges. Our? She repeated slowly. Yes, he said, his voice calm but carrying an authority that settled into the room like gravity. You see, Danielle, I own this airline. Her jaw dropped. She stared at him, the words slamming into her like a freight train. You... what? I'm Walter Kensington, he said matter-of-factly, founder and CEO of Kensington Air. Danielle couldn't move, couldn't think. The man she'd just helped pick up scattered shirts from the floor, the one who could barely twist a bottle cap, owned the airline? She sank into the nearest chair before her knees gave out. Her heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst through her ribs. Why am I here? She finally whispered. Walter sat across from her, folding his hands calmly on the table between them. Because, Danielle, he said softly, people like you are rare. You gave up something important to help someone you didn't even know. And I don't forget people like that. Danielle's throat went dry. She opened her mouth, but no words came. And then Walter leaned in, his next words making her wonder if she'd just stepped into a story too good to be true. Danielle sat frozen in that leather chair, the taste of shock thick in her throat. The hum of the lounge's air conditioning faded beneath the pounding of her heartbeat. She stared at Walter, no, Mr. Kensington, trying to reconcile the image of the frail, struggling old man with the powerful figure in front of her now. You own Kensington Air? Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. Walter's smile softened as he nodded. That's correct. Danielle blinked again, still expecting someone to jump out and yell that this was some kind of prank show. So, the whole time you were testing me? Or, Walter raised a hand gently. No tests, no games. I was exactly who you saw out there. A man who needed help. And you gave it without hesitation, even when it cost you. Danielle's stomach twisted. My flight. She trailed off, rubbing her temples. The weight of the missed connection slammed back into her. That interview was everything to me. Walter tilted his head, studying her closely. Tell me about it. She hesitated, unsure why he cared, but something in his expression, calm, genuine, made her answer. I was flying to Seattle, she said quietly. There's a marketing firm there. They finally called me for an interview. It's the kind of job that could change my life. Walter leaned back, listening intently, not like some billionaire humoring a stranger, but like a man truly interested in her story. Do you like marketing? He asked. I love it, she said without hesitation. I've been doing small projects here and there, social media campaigns, branding for local businesses, but it's hard to break through when you're stuck living paycheck to paycheck. Walter nodded slowly. And you gave that chance up for me. Danielle bit her lip. I didn't think of it like that. You needed help. It just felt like the right thing to do. Walter's eyes softened. That says a lot about you, Danielle. More than you know. For a long moment, silence settled between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Danielle's thoughts spun in a million directions. Why was she here? Why was he telling her all this? Finally, Walter spoke again, his tone shifting slightly, calmer, but with a firmness that made her sit straighter. You know, most people in this world are in a hurry, always moving, always chasing something for themselves. But you stopped. You saw someone in need, and you chose compassion over convenience. That matters to me. Danielle let out a shaky laugh. I appreciate that, but honestly, I don't know what happens now. I can't afford to book another flight. And my interview... Her voice cracked, and she quickly looked down, embarrassed by the sting of tears in her eyes. Walter leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His next words were slow, deliberate, like each one carried weight. What if I told you, you don't need that interview? Danielle frowned, confused. What do you mean? Walter smiled, not the polite kind this time, but the kind that hinted at something bigger. I own an airline, yes, but Kensington Air is more than planes. We have partnerships in hospitality, logistics, even marketing divisions. And right now, we're looking for someone to lead a project aimed at building authentic brand campaigns for local communities. Someone with creativity, persistence, and integrity. Danielle stared at him, her breath catching in her throat. Are you offering me a job? Walter chuckled softly. I'm offering you a career, if you're willing to take it. Her hands trembled against her lap. A dozen thoughts collided in her head at once. This can't be real. He just met me. Why me? Why would you trust me with something like that? She whispered. Walter's gaze held steady, his voice low but certain. Because how you treat people when no one's watching tells me everything I need to know. You chose kindness when it cost you. That's the kind of person I want on my team. Danielle swallowed hard, her eyes stinging now for a different reason. For a moment, she couldn't speak. All she could do was stare at him, trying to make sense of how one small decision, one act of simple humanity, had turned her entire life upside down. Finally, she managed to whisper, "Yes." Walter's smile widened. "Good. Then consider yourself part of Kensington Group. We'll handle your accommodations, get you home safely, and start onboarding next week." Danielle laughed, half in disbelief, half in sheer joy. I don't even know what to say." "Just keep being who you are," Walter said, standing to shake her hand. His grip was firm, strong, not the shaky touch she'd felt before. And as he looked her in the eye, his voice carried a warmth that melted whatever fear was left inside her. "Sometimes," he said softly, "life rewards those who stop to care." But Danielle was about to learn this wasn't just a job. This was the beginning of a life she never imagined. Danielle sat there in stunned silence, her fingers tightening around the edge of her chair. She had agreed, but her brain was still trying to catch up to the words that had just left Walter Kensington's mouth. A career, at his company. No more juggling 2 jobs, no more scraping by, counting quarters before every grocery run. "Wait," she said finally, her voice shaky. "You're serious? This isn't some publicity stunt or something?" Walter chuckled softly, lowering himself into the seat across from her. "Danielle, I'm not interested in stunts. I'm interested in people who do the right thing when no one's watching. That's you." Her throat tightened. She wanted to cry, laugh, scream, maybe all at once. I don't even have a resume with me," she blurted, as if that detail mattered anymore. "You won't need one," Walter replied, smiling gently. "You've already shown me more than a piece of paper ever could." Danielle pressed her palms to her knees, grounding herself. Her life, her entire life, had just flipped in the span of 20 minutes. The woman who had been praying not to miss an interview was now sitting in a private lounge, being offered a role that sounded bigger than anything she'd ever dreamed of. What exactly would I be doing?" she asked cautiously. Walter leaned back, folding his hands. "We're expanding our community outreach through authentic branding. Too many companies focus on numbers and forget people. I want campaigns that feel real, that matter. I need someone who understands struggle, who knows how to connect. That's you, Danielle." Her eyes widened. "Me? I mean, I've only handled small clients, local businesses." "That's exactly why I want you," Walter said firmly. "You know what matters to the people we serve, and I'm giving you the resources to make something incredible." Danielle sat there, barely breathing. The weight of what he was offering wasn't just a paycheck. It was a chance to matter, a chance to do work she believed in. "What's the salary?" she asked, half joking because her voice shook so badly. Walter smiled. "Enough that you'll never have to take 2 jobs again." Danielle laughed through the tears she didn't realize had escaped. She wiped her cheeks quickly, embarrassed. I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," Walter said simply. "And when you're ready, come to our headquarters in Los Angeles. We'll handle everything else." Her mind was spinning like a carousel, but deep inside, something steady bloomed. A sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. "Yes," she whispered again, this time with conviction. "Yes, I'll do it." Walter's face lit up with a warmth that reminded her of the man she first helped back in the terminal. He stood and offered his hand again, and this time when she shook it, her grip matched his strength. "You made the right choice today," he said softly. "Not just in helping me, but in believing in yourself." As she sat back down, trying to absorb it all, a flight attendant walked in with a tray of champagne flutes. Walter took 2 and handed one to her. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. Danielle lifted hers with trembling fingers. "To kindness," she whispered, the word catching in her throat. The clink of their glasses sounded like a door swinging open to a future she never thought she'd see. And as she sipped, Danielle couldn't help but think, this morning she was just another tired woman in an overcrowded airport. Now, she was the newest hire at a billion-dollar company because she chose to care when no one else did. But as surreal as this moment felt, the truth was simple. One small act had changed everything. Hours later, as the private car carried her to a 5-star hotel arranged by Walter's team, Danielle stared out the window, watching city lights blur against the darkening sky. Her mind replayed the day like a movie, the rushing, the panic, the choice to stop. And now, this. One decision, One moment of choosing someone else over herself had rewritten her entire future. She thought about how easy it would have been to keep walking, to tell herself it wasn't her problem. That's what most people did. That's what life teaches you sometimes. Look out for yourself, because no one else will. But kindness, real selfless kindness, it still mattered. And today proved it could move mountains. When her phone buzzed with a message from Walter, "Welcome to the family," Danielle smiled through tears. She didn't just get a job, she got a chance to live with purpose. And as the car turned toward the hotel entrance, one truth settled deep inside her. Sometimes, the fastest way to get where you're meant to be is by stopping to help someone else. So, the next time you're rushing through life, ask yourself, would you stop? Because you never know who you're helping or how much it might change your life. If this story touched you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs hope today, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life lessons that prove one thing: kindness always wins.